The 4th of July fireworks painted the sky over Grayson Wildlife Park in bursts of red, white, and blue, each explosion rumbling through the empty zoo like distant thunder. 4 teenagers crouched outside the rusted front gates, shadows dancing over their faces with every flare from the lakefront celebration behind them. Eli shifted impatiently. He was tall, with restless eyes, the kind of kid who never sat still in class. His grin gleamed in the strobing lights. "This is it," he whispered. "One night, one story no one else will ever have." Jamie adjusted the hood of his sweatshirt, heart pounding. He wasn't sure if it was excitement or dread making his hands shake. His eyes flicked to Rhea beside him, smart, cautious, always the voice of reason. She hesitated at the gate, chewing her lip. "Eli, this is stupid," she said. "They shut this place down for a reason." Malik, the shortest but broadest of the 4, raised his phone to film. "Stupid is how you go viral," he said, forcing a laugh. His voice quivered despite the swagger in his words. As another firework burst overhead, Eli slipped bolt cutters from his backpack. He worked the lock with practiced hands until it snapped, the chain falling with a loud clatter that echoed through the silent zoo. For a heartbeat, they froze, every crack of fireworks seeming to mask a dozen imagined footsteps. Then Eli pushed the gate open, hinges groaning like an old creature waking up. They stepped inside together, swallowed by darkness. The entrance path was a tunnel of dying hedges, skeletal branches reaching like claws under the flickering sky. Signs rose from the weeds. "Welcome to Grayson Wildlife Park." A cracked map board displayed faded outlines of exhibits: elephants, monkeys, giraffes, penguins. Jamie stepped cautiously, boots crunching on glass. Moonlight reflected off the abandoned carousel in the distance, horses frozen mid-gallop, manes tangled with vines. "Holy crap," Malik muttered, panning his phone light across rusted cages. "It's like the apocalypse started here." They passed the aviary, its domed roof shattered, wires dangling like torn spider webs. Past it lay the monkey's enclosure, doors swinging on squealing hinges. A mural of chimps smiled from a crumbling wall, eyes cracked and hollow. Rhea lingered at an old snack stand, its window open like a yawning mouth. Inside, stale bags of chips lay scattered, a register stuck open with a dusty sign: "July 4th special, free soda with hot dog." Eli called back, voice hushed but urgent. "This way, the aquarium. That's where they said the tanks still have something in them." The building loomed ahead, squat and dark, its walls streaked with black algae. They stepped through shattered double doors, their lights cutting across massive tanks filled with black water. Moonlight filtering through broken skylights made the water's surface gleam like oil. A smell of rotting fish and mildew thickened the air. Jamie stepped close to one tank, peering through spiderweb cracks. His breath fogged the glass. For a second, he thought he saw something move, just a shadow gliding beneath the surface. But when he blinked, it was gone. Malik's phone screen glowed as he filmed the dark hallways. "This is insane. People on TikTok are going to eat this up." Rhea clutched Jamie's arm. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. A soft drip, drip, drip echoed around them, but between the drips came another sound, like something slithering just below the floor, following their steps. Eli swung his flashlight, but the beam only revealed empty tanks, shattered signs, and old placards advertising feeding times. Daily at noon, they hurried out into the night, rain beginning to fall as they crossed to the reptile house. The first drops hissed on broken glass, mingling with distant thunder. The sign above the entrance hung crooked, letters barely legible. Inside, the air turned sticky and thick, heavy with the scent of rotting straw and stale heat trapped for decades. Rows of glass terrariums lined the halls, most empty, some containing only piles of bones. Eli ran his light along the tanks. "Imagine being locked in here with something alive," he said, voice low but tinged with excitement. Malik trailed his phone camera along the walls. "There's got to be something left," he whispered, eyes darting to every dark corner. A faint scratching echoed down the corridor, like claws on tile. "Stop," Rhea hissed, grabbing Jamie's arm. "Did you hear that?" But Jamie was staring at an old sign. Exhibit X, staff only. A padlock dangled broken on the door handle, its chain coiled on the floor like a snake. They exchanged nervous glances. Eli pushed the door open with a groan of old hinges. The room beyond was concrete, lined with tall cages. Old papers, yellowed and torn, were scattered across the floor. A single rusted table sat in the center, its surface etched with deep gouges and dark stains. Black candles in rusted holders surrounded the table, stubs melted into twisted lumps. At the far end, 3 men stood in the glow of battery lanterns. They were dressed in dark clothes, one holding a long knife, another clutching a small burlap sack. Jamie gasped. "What the hell are they doing?" Rhea pulled him back into the shadows. They peered through cracked glass as the men began chanting softly, words warped by the echo of the reptile hall. The tallest man pulled something from the sack, a skull, small, glassy, its hollow eye sockets catching the light. He placed it at the center of the table and began drawing symbols on the concrete with what looked like black ash or dried blood. Malik swallowed hard. "Are they summoning something?" One of the men stopped suddenly, head snapping toward the cracked glass where the teens hid. His eyes were pale, unblinking. "Someone's here," he growled. A sudden gust of icy air swept through the room, extinguishing the lanterns. A deep groaning rose from the walls, as if the building itself were waking up. The chanting fell silent. From the dark cages lining the walls came shifting noises, soft rattles, like something slithering through straw. Then a voice echoed through the room, raspy and layered. "Stay." The men bolted for the exit, footsteps thundering down the corridor. But with every step, shadows stretched out like claws, reaching for them, swallowing the light of their lanterns, until their screams faded into the dark. Eli grabbed the others, his face pale. "We need to move, now." They burst into the main hall of the reptile house just as thunder crashed overhead, shaking dust from the rafters. Rain hammered the roof, drumming like 1,000 fists. They slipped across the wet floor, skidding past broken terrariums. A warped speaker crackled overhead with a recording so old it sounded half-human. "Welcome to the world of reptiles." The voice warped into a chorus of whispers, each one speaking their names: Eli, Jamie, Rhea, Malik. They crashed through the doors into the storm. Lightning split the sky, revealing the zoo's pathways like veins etched into the earth. Wind gusted hard enough to bend rusted signposts, whipping water into their faces. They sprinted through the monkey's enclosure. Empty cages loomed on either side. Bars twisted like something had forced them open from the inside. A skeleton in a zookeeper's uniform slumped in the corner of the feeding platform, mouth frozen, mid-scream. A voice rose from the dark, cycling words that should have been impossible. "Stay, stay, stay." Each repetition layered with distorted versions of their own voices. A sudden boom of thunder silenced everything for a heartbeat. Then a new sound rose. Wet, rhythmic footfalls like something heavy, but fast slapping against soaked concrete. Jamie grabbed Rhea's hand. "Run." They sprinted across the Penguin Plaza, water flooding the cracked tiles. Fake ice sculptures stood broken. Penguin statues toppled like decapitated sentinels. Between flashes of lightning, they glimpsed something pale sliding across the water behind them. Malik slipped, arms pinwheeling. Eli yanked him up, but the creature's voice slithered close, whispering in Malik's own voice. "Malik, come back." They darted into the elephant's yard. Storm drains overflowed, water swirling around the massive shapes of toppled statues. A fence lay twisted where something enormous had pushed through long ago. One of the elephant statues shifted in the lightning, stone trunk twitching before falling still. Jamie's heart stuttered. He couldn't tell if it was his imagination or something worse. They staggered toward the maintenance tunnels, hoping for a way out. The concrete corridor sloped downward, lined with moldy pipes. Water streamed along the floor, rising past their ankles. Every step echoed. Behind them, something scraped along the tunnel walls, metal screeching like claws dragging across steel. Rhea gasped, pointing to a junction. That ladder. Go! They waded through water that now reached their knees, climbing the slick rungs of a maintenance ladder one by one. Thunder shook the tunnel, rattling bolts loose from the ceiling. Halfway up, Jamie looked down. In the pale glow of Eli's flashlight, a shape emerged from the flooded tunnel. Tall, thin, skin pale as the moon, limbs bent in impossible angles. Its face shifted like melting wax, features cycling through each of their own faces, eyes blank and endless. The creature opened its mouth, and their voices spilled out in a broken choir. Stay, stay, stay. They burst through a rusted trapdoor into the zoo's old petting barn. Rain roared across the open yard outside, thunder rolling overhead like the sky was splitting open. Wind swept hay and debris in swirling gusts. Empty pens gaped in the shadows, fences half toppled. A sign hung crooked. Pet and feed the goats, July 4th special. The letters dripped with rain, smudged almost beyond recognition. They stumbled across the slippery floor, boots thudding on wet planks. A loud crash behind them sent splinters flying as the trapdoor exploded open. The creature slithered into the barn, limbs folding and unfolding like a puppet, pale eyes shining with reflected lightning. It hissed their names in their own voices, overlapping into a chorus that made their ears ring. Jamie, Rhea, Eli, Malik. Malik sobbed as he crawled toward the barn's far doors. They kicked open the doors and fled into the giraffe yard, wind nearly knocking them off their feet. Lightning strobed, illuminating tall feeding towers twisted into skeletal fingers. Rusted playground equipment lay half buried in mud, slides buckled, and swings tangled like nooses. The creature lunged from the barn, sprinting low across the mud with insect-like speed. Its arms and legs bent backward as it climbed a feeding tower, perching high above them like a monstrous gargoyle. From its mouth poured a choked melody of their own laughs, cries, and screams. Each sound repeated back, warped and twisted until it barely sounded human. Jamie slipped on the muddy slope. Rhea caught him, pulling him to his feet, her eyes wide with terror. Eli led them through a torn section of fence into the giraffe barn. Inside, shadows swallowed them whole. Water streamed through holes in the roof, puddles reflecting pale moonlight. Feed buckets swung on chains, creaking softly like 1,000 tiny bells. A voice rose in the dark rafters, whispering from every direction. Stay, stay, stay. Lightning flashed, and for an instant, Jamie saw dozens of pale hands clinging to the beams overhead, clawed fingers flexing. A cold wind swept through the barn, slamming doors and rattling chains. Malik slipped on wet straw, crashing into an overturned trough. He screamed as shadows detached themselves from the ceiling, crawling down the walls in jerky, inhuman movements. Rhea grabbed an old pitchfork, swinging wildly at the dark shapes. Sparks flew as the metal struck concrete pillars, momentarily driving the shadows back. Eli found an emergency exit, shoving it open to reveal the zoo's old tram station beyond. Overgrown tracks led to the parking lot, weeds swallowing broken cars. Go! Eli roared, waving them through as thunder boomed overhead. Would you like me to keep going immediately? They sprinted through the tram station, lightning illuminating shattered benches and overturned carts. Rusted tram cars lay tipped on their sides, doors hanging open like screaming mouths. Rain poured from the broken canopy overhead, soaking them to the bone. A voice rose behind them, guttural and layered with their own cries. Stay, stay, stay. They ducked under a fallen tram car, crawling across slick gravel. Rhea slipped, her hands slamming into a shard of broken glass. Blood mixed with rain as Jamie pulled her forward. Malik's phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced down and saw his own face filling the screen, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. He hurled the phone away, heart hammering. At the far end of the station, a maintenance gate stood half open, metal bent outward like something had forced its way through. Beyond it, the zoo's security office squatted in the dark. They raced through the gate, splashing into ankle-deep water. Lightning flashed, revealing the security building's shattered windows and moss-covered walls. Inside, monitors flickered with static. Jamie punched buttons on a rusted control panel. Cameras blinked to life, showing twisted images of the zoo, the creature crawling across rooftops, pale figures moving through treetops, shadows flowing like liquid across open fields. Eli found the emergency lockdown switch, slamming it with both hands. Alarms wailed. Steel doors clanged shut across the zoo, echoing like gunshots. On the monitors, creatures lunged only to be crushed by descending gates or trapped behind barriers. A final lightning strike cut the power, plunging the office into darkness. Silence fell, broken only by ragged breathing and the drumming of rain on the roof. Jamie staggered to the window. Dawn was breaking, pale light creeping through thinning clouds. Police cars screeched up the driveway, lights flashing. Officers emerged, weapons drawn, sweeping the zoo. Eli sank to the floor, gasping. Rhea knelt beside him, pressing her bloody hand to his chest as if to make sure he was still real. Malik stood frozen by the monitors, eyes wide, watching static dance across the screens. Jamie sat on the curb outside the zoo gates, paramedics wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. The rising sun cast weak light over shattered fences and twisted animal enclosures. Officers moved carefully through the park, radios crackling with terse updates. No movement, no survivors found, all clear. A medic knelt in front of Jamie, flashlight shining in his eyes. "You're safe now," the medic said softly, using Jamie's own voice. Jamie recoiled, eyes darting to the medic's pale, reflective eyes. The medic stood, face blank, and melted into the crowd of responders without another word. 3 weeks later, Jamie woke each night to his own voice whispering from the shadows of his room. At Rhea's house, mirrors stretched and twisted her reflection, lips moving out of sync with her thoughts. Malik found new bruises on his arms each morning. His phone buzzed with blocked calls, and when he answered, he heard himself crying on the line. Eli began hearing his own voice, whispering from empty hallways at school, repeating things he'd never said aloud. Deep in the zoo, crime scene tape flapped in the summer breeze. A county investigator stepped into the reptile house, flashlight cutting through the stale dark. The lock on Exhibit X's door lay snapped open. Inside, dozens of frantic hand-carved words covered the walls and floor, all repeating the same message: stay. The investigator raised his radio. His voice came back garbled, overlaid with echoes of 4 terrified teens. Stay, stay, stay. He never radioed back. Somewhere beyond the tree line, something pale crawled into the forest, practicing new voices, learning, waiting for the next 4th of July.